So, hi, so we're very happy to be here. Let's wait a second until Gabriela shows up. Is she here already? Hi,
Kiko,
Gabriela.
she's there.
Yes, I don't know what's going on with my camera. I cannot see myself, but anyway, maybe Kiko, could you maybe go to the files and maybe we could, I'm gonna.
Oh, please try to share the pictures. Maybe we can see them still. Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
Yes, we see your screen. Okay, great.
All right. So I would like to. Oh, I'm sorry, Kiko. I interrupted you.
Okay, no problem. So right as Gary was saying, we worked on a project from Gabriela like 4 or 5 years ago, and we're going to talk about 3 or 4 artworks that deal with the subject of perspective and how we can explore different ways or not very natural ways to deal with perspective and why it should be interesting. And so Gabriela is going to start with this project I collaborated on, and then I will show 2 other projects that I worked on before, which also deal with similar close thoughts, but let's see. Okay, so Gabriela, go on, please.
Okay, thank you, Kiko. Can everybody hear me well? I don't know what's going on with my, yes?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
okay,
perfect.
Thank you so much. Yes, well, I would like to start talking about the project that is Angulo cero, which translates in English to angle 0. The title of the project's response is to how we see how our angle or point of view is actually very centered. And that was a personal necessity for me to subvert what we normally see, as I fell into the conclusion that the order we give to our surroundings is like a refugee to our own disorientation. So this project started in 2008, and it is important to say the year, as by the year we didn't have the capacity of working with good optimization programs, as well as computers that could handle very, very large files. Actually, to make this, I had a lot of difficulties. So what I did first, well, I would like to first just start with, I don't know, something that you could imagine. If you could imagine yourself standing along a corridor, for example, it's representative most of us as a triangle, where the farthest we look, the more narrow it becomes. As in these pictures, for example, well, what happens whenever we look at depth in space?
Gabriela, sorry.
Yes?
Are you already opening the images, or is this just the thumbnails? Because we just see the thumbnails.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so maybe
that's much better. Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do this as well. Can you see it there, or you can only see the images? I'll do it this way. So from the point of view of well, I started to think of the point of view of a blind person, for example. And I started to think that maybe the sidewalk or a corridor would not compress. That maybe the space curves inward or outward. So looking at the beginning of the corridors or sidewalks, for example, I could always see this trace line to slightly curve in its opposite direction. It wasn't a straight line. So same thing happened on the left side of the sidewalk. Its limits would curve outwards as well. So if you were to, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but if you were to stand over here, the line isn't straight. It kind of curves outwards. So that was one of the points where I decided to make this project. So to make this project, I decided to, oh, sorry. Yes, I decided to construct a dolly to travel the straightest horizontal line I could capture with a camera and get different points of view from every single perspective in the space, only in the horizontal line, facing this space with a very simple, let's say, perspective. So I would travel as you do in movies from one side to the other and take, here I took around, I don't know, 1,000 pictures. This is another place where I took the pictures. These are daytime pictures. And well, this is kind of how it looked put together as a stop motion video. It's just like the traveling, what you see in movies a lot. So I would like to also point out that the limits of technology access is crucial when you see the images, as you can see the ups and downs, the bumps, the imperfections at the time. So it's more of an experimental piece. And I also believe it speaks on how nothing can be objective when you experiment, because even though everything can be controlled, you always have the subjective point of view of the person that is handling the project. Like the pictures we see from Earth, from, I don't know, to give an example, from NASA, for example, are also done from no subjective point of view of who chooses what to show and how. So we cannot escape subjectivity. So what I'm showing now are the travelings that I made. These are very, very various pictures. And then what I did was cut off 10 pixels or however pixels I thought that could be relevant to the space, so it would fit what we normally see. And from each photograph, I only captured 10 pixels from the middle of each photograph. And then from the second photograph, the same thing. Third photograph, the same thing until, I don't know, photograph 1000. And then I would join these centers to form a new image. So here's a little example of what I did. I'm just gonna fast forward a little because it's a little long. Yeah, that's the only automated system that I had at the time. This started in 2008. And well, okay, so yeah. This is the final image from this image. Only we get that final image. And then we open again and we start putting them all together again, like making a puzzle of various points of view of the picture. So these are the first pictures that I got to do with angle 0. I decided to unite the trees in the end. And well, perspective does change, kind of like comes in. You can't really see what happens to perspective here. These were the first pictures that I made. Over here, you can't see because I was actually in front of the building, very, very close, and I was looking upwards. But the result is that the building does not become triangular. In the end, it actually curves outwards. That's what I wanted to show. This is another picture from nighttime. Then we go to daytime pictures. So this was a field where people would play. And what happened in this result is that, again, the furthest you can look, actually, depth is kind of felt like a wall. It's no longer, how can I explain this? It's no longer like a place where you can walk into. Maybe it's more like upwards. It changes, and it also opens. This is a beach. This is a park, another place where I could see that the lines would curve outwards. And here, this is another place that actually was the one that I showed earlier. This one over here. So the results of uniting all the pictures was, was this over here. Then I decided to not only use the middle portion of the pictures, but maybe try to use one from the left, do a left-sided portion of pictures put together like a puzzle, and then the right-sided. And I wanted to explore every single part that I photographed, not only the middle, not only rescuing the middle of each picture and discarding everything else. So this was the left side, this was the right side. And then I spoke to Kiko, because I wanted to know if it was possible to make all the possibilities of the images that I took and put them together in order to make a video about it. And well, I believe, well, these were the first attempts. Oh, okay. So yeah, these were the first attempts. I don't know if you can see it here? Yes, you still, okay. That we were trying to automate the system of a bigger computer. And well, the computer wasn't understanding how to make it, but we did use GIMP, and we used ImageJ, which are programs where you can actually program your own thing for your own necessities. That was very helpful. This is quite close to what I was making manually, but now the computer was making it. Afterwards, Kiko could actually unite all the pictures, and this is the results. So
we are seeing this 003 JPEG still image, or are you showing the video? No.
I'm showing a video. Let me see.
No, it's not showing. Okay.
Okay. Can you see it there?
Yes, now we do.
All right. So yes, these are some images that we got to work with Kiko using ImageJ. And as you can see, not only the single point of view is subverted, there's also something happening. The furthest that you go, the fastest it goes, and well, the closest you are, it's actually very slow. So everything is subverted. So speaking about subjectivity, I do believe that we cannot escape subjectivity whenever we're trying to be very objective and trying to understand something in a different way. But from an art's point of view, this is not a problem. And the results we show have a glimpse of another reality. But that reality is not scientific. But what is being destroyed, however, is the theory of perspective as we know it. And the question that arises from this project is how the world's construction influences our belief systems. And I think it's important to channel human centrism in a way in order to get out of ourselves and understand what the truth that we know of for ourselves responds to our own gaze and concerns, and that our logic is quite limited. Another thing that I thought that was very beautiful to find out from this project is that from what I initially did in these traveling videos, the way that we reorganize it, it's like having a puzzle, and we just broke it apart and we reconstructed it with the same images. There was no Photoshop in this. We are using the same kind of information that you see from the left on the right, but in a different order. And I find this very very beautiful and very amusing of how changing or creating another order in which you see the images, something else pops out, and that you could not see in the beginning, even using the same image. So I thought that was very beautiful to find in the project. And well, here's another example of that. On the right side, you can see the traveling that I made on the park. And on the left side, you can see what happens, something that could never be possible to see with the naked eye. So yeah, well, I think that was it for angle zero.
Thank you, Gabriela. Yes, and that angle zero concept, we are trying to understand how to go on with this. And in these last weeks, we have been talking about some projects that also deal with similar questions, maybe. So I will share my screen now, and I will show a video here. 1 second. Oh, I cannot share.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop sharing. Like,
Okay.
oh, not again. Sorry. There we go.
Are you sharing, or should I?
I am having a little.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh no, I cannot share.
I don't know what's happening.
Does Kiko have host rights?
Now I have. Now I have.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. So, this is a project from Rodrigo D'Arteano, a friend of mine since childhood. I collaborated with him and 2 or 3 more people to build this project. I'm gonna run it a bit faster. That we fit it in the time. So we built in the year 2009 this autonomous robot that would draw lines in the desert. It was a bit inspired on the Nazca lines, because in the same way of the Nazca lines, this does take out the upper layer of the sand and will draw lines. And in this project, Rodrigo, it was his art project. What he did is imagine how it would be to draw one-to-one models of cities on the desert. So this robot did actually draw complete blocks, complete parts of different cities in Latin America on a desert in Guarmey. And so the thing here, or the questions here are like, so we tend to concentrate in the cities, and we lose perspective of the size of the land. Like it's amazing how whole cities can fit in an empty part of the desert. Again, this is like a one-to-one maquette or model, from a city. And it's again like a different experiment to deal with perspective and how to draw a model. This was done in that time. There were no drones, so all these takes were done from a from a parapente. What's the name? Paraglider. So, and well, it was a whole challenge of building the thing and so on. That's me like 10 years ago, or 12. So this is how the cities were transported to this desert and kind of put together, trying to respect the real size. So this was in the end, you could walk on the desert, like walking in the blocks of these cities, like, but all of them like collapsed together. So this is one project I wanted to show, and then I have another one that also deals with kind of subjectivity and how to like flatten the perspective that it's not how you see, but it's more like what you can cover. No, so this project is from 2004. I worked together with Jose Carlos Martinat and Arturo Diaz. We built this intervention in the center of Lima, where we, in that times, Google was a really small company, and we wrote an email to them and asked for permission to do searches, automated searches, what we call today machine to machine or APIs or so. And then what we did was we were listening to the newspapers through machine to machine, so reading text from the newspapers, web pages, and we were pulling all of the other information that was on the web. In those times, the information on the web was not that much, so it was easier to say, okay, we're getting all of the information related to this news. And all of that information was then printed and thrown on the streets in the center of Lima for a few days. We had this computer running everything in the background, so a very old one actually now. And I have a video of this. Where is it now? Moment. This one. So and again, this is like the usual way you get information is through news feeds or actually very subjective ways of looking at information happening, of things happening, no? So what we're doing was like forcing this machine to complete the possibility for people to get to that information in a more objective way, like there's all the information, not just the one you get, no? And that is like very important in the meantime. I will make it faster, that, no? But I mean, this was 2004 and the web was much smaller, no? Now that it's huge, there's again the same concern that Gabriela has, no? Like there is a reality and there should be ways to understand it objectively and not just through perspective. And well, in an older version of this project, my colleague Jose Carlos Martinat did, for instance, this installation here, no, that makes us think of how a single subject can deal with an endless amount of information. He was pulling information on one subject and printing it and letting it fall on the gallery's floor. But it shows a bit of how, in the end, we are or aren't able to grasp information. No. Okay. I hope I was clear. Sorry for my English. I mean, I don't know how much time we have. We could talk a bit more on this.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Kiko and Gabriel. I think you're touching upon some points that I think will probably resonate with the other presenters and commentators. And so I think maybe it would be interesting to hear what others, how others have reacted to the work, or I mean, I feel like this is a very interesting collaboration, the one that you and Gabriela are embarked on, and I think it has to do a lot with what it means to look as a human or to look inhumanly at something, no? And we're scraping the surface of, you know, like computer vision, basically what it means to look at the world through the eyes of a computer. So I think that is something that definitely has to do a lot with model making in the recent years in architecture. So I would be interested to hear what others have to say, or what others think about that.
David, please.
Yes. I'm not sure if I can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just a question for both of you, which is maybe a bit provocative, but I'm struck by, and this is something that I very much like about what you've been saying, both of you, and I'm wondering if you think these examples you've been showing, are they high-tech or low-tech? Because at a certain point, high-tech becomes low-tech, you know, at some point, the things that we do that were high-tech at one point become low-tech. And what is the aesthetic of these initiatives, like the robot in the desert, like the what's it called, a planning? No, it's a training. No, what's the when the camera moves? Are these things high-tech or low-tech? That's my question.
Yes, it's very low tech. I constructed the dolly. I made what I could at the time, and also technology at the time in 2008 when I started the project wasn't as good as it is right now. So yes, it is very low tech because we had limits in technology and in access. But it is crucial when you see the images as well, as you can see the ups and downs, the bumps, the imperfections at the time. It's more as an experimental piece.
I would say yes. I mean, it is low tech, as Gabriela is saying. For instance, these printers you see on the screen. I mean, they're standing on little pieces of wood and hanging from cables from the ceiling. And if you see how we build the robot that would go through the desert, it was also like a very primitive way of building a robot. No, it's I mean, but it's also very much connected to building things locally. No, it's not easy to get good providers for selling you good services of building the thing. So it is very low tech, but in the end, the aim, what we look for, isn't actually so low tech. Like the questions behind are still, at least as we believe, are somehow new. So in that sense, it would be like, it might be called high tech, but artesanalmente, like built with the hands and with not much precision and so on. No, but so it's kind of both actually. Low tech because of how we build it, and high tech maybe because of what we are asking. But it's in between there. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for your answer.
I think I would like to ask a question. If thank you very much. For me, it was you're coming from a completely different angle, literally, making this kind of work, and in a way, it was very unsettling, but in a pleasurable way. Like it's giving a kind of out-of-body experiences where you also liberate us from our dominant kind of view. And the question I have is more linked to, or maybe it's more of a remark. I feel as an architect, also mostly as a practicing architect, we make models to kind of understand what the dominant point of view is, to kind of make a hierarchy in the space. And you're doing the opposite. You're in front of a subject and you're kind of exploding possible ways of looking at it. So I found that quite interesting. And I have two more specific questions, I suppose, about the project. One is about the title. You call it Angle Zero. So I was just wondering where that comes from. And the other project is, which is more of a technical question, when you, Gabriela, when you explained the method of cutting away pixel by pixel and then reassembling, what was the criterion of selecting elements that stay and elements that go? I just wonder.
So yes, the Angle Zero, the project's name, responds to limiting the point of view. So you limit your point of view because I only capture just 10 pixels of each picture I took from the traveling of the dolly. And in that way, when you limit your point of view and you unite that with other pictures that are also limited, you can see the world as if you didn't have one single point of view, but multiple points of view scattered. So yeah, Angle Zero, it's not actually Angle Zero, it's angle maybe, I don't know, 0.1. I don't know how much it is. But yeah, constructing it and reconstructing it, I believe that you can actually see the space and reorganize the space. It's not, yeah, I don't know how to, yeah, that was the subject, why I decided to call it Angle Zero. And for the cutting of the images, I organized it just the way that it was. So for example, here you can see that the first picture is the first line, the second picture is the second line, the third picture is the third line. I didn't quite try to make other adjustments to the picture. There's no Photoshop here. It's only following the order that I followed. So you can reconstruct the image in another way. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. You give some clarification. Thank you. Thank you.
Paulo, please. You're muted, I think. Yes, you are muted.
Thank you, Kiko. Thank you, Gabriela. I basically want to react. No, I don't know. I really don't know if I have a question. First, I would say that I found very interested in the presentation, especially in the desert project. How much the idea of the model has been displaced from physical materials to digital, because it's true that maybe those traces in the desert could be seen as models of maquettes of something, or potential maquettes, but I couldn't stop thinking in the model inside the machine, which was in the sense that this digital model was instructing the apparatus and the actions, no? Which in a way is one of the most radical transformations, thinking in what is a digital model, no? Not only in its virtuality, but in its capacity to interact and instruct and give instructions, no, with certain criteria. And the other reaction is related to this fantastic work of this perspective or this horizon, this shared horizon, in which I couldn't stop making relationship with architecture. Maybe it's metaphorical or allegorical, I don't know, but in the sense that it's dealing also with the possibility of an image of multiple point of view. And I really think architecture has that in common, even though we have been educated to construct a personal point of view with the idea of authorship. At the end, we we construct structures, we build up structure that has to contain all those perspectives too. And and sometimes we have the illusion that we construct individually, but we really make architecture in the process, in the process of accumulation in history. So I was thinking whenever one of us make a entre guillemets unique house, how many houses really are there, no? And how easy it would be to how interesting would be to superpose all the thousands or hundreds of years accumulated in this in the choices we make every day, no? And how important is to even though it's an individual action, to understand there is a multiple action, not only multiple oriented, but actually is the trace that accumulates history. I don't know if I can make it sense with the words. Sorry.
I think also, Paulo, what you're alluding to, it's from architecture. I think the first question that arises is how is this different from the history of axonometrics, no, which actually try to eliminate a single point of view, and it's probably the desire to expose or to present multiple points of view that create this distorted field, no, where the optical distortions of the machine, of the lens, become more legible, no, like the perspectives, the distortions, the vertical distortions of the lenses become more legible, no. But I think it's also interesting to think of this exercise or this project in the very, very long history of anti-perspective drawings or axonometric drawings. And there's an interesting book which you probably know, but it's worth mentioning, Massimo Scolari's oblique drawing. No, it's a history of anti-perspective drawings, and I think this project enters an interesting dialogue with that history, which I think would be interesting to revise if Kiko and Gabriela haven't come across that book. No?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that, because I didn't know about that book. I would love to look for those oblique drawings. Yes,
yeah, I think the title is Oblique Drawing, History of Anti-Perspective, I think. It's from probably like 5-6 years ago, a little bit more maybe.
Yeah, I'm very drawn to those types of works. And actually, there's a park here in Lima that is called Maria Reich, which is the archaeologist that discovered the Nazca lines, and that actually does go well with Kiko's project in Nazca, because Nazca lines were not made for humans to see them. It was actually made for it to be seen from space. It was for other beings to see them. So that is also a subversion. And about going back to the park of Maria Reich, if it's here in Lima, and I don't know, I was trying to find out which architect did it, because in that place, he tried to define perspective as well. And for example, if you're walking in the corridor or sidewalk in the park, you can see how perspective does change the sense of depth. For example, sometimes he made the corridors be wider in the end, so whenever you walk on them, it is actually a square you're walking in. And it is very interesting. I think that he got the idea from the Nazca lines and Maria Reich.
Paulo, I see that your hand is raised. We have to move on, but please Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I had a question to Gabriela, because something that was intriguing to me was talking about perspective, obvious from one point of view as a human construct as a human construct, but in the photograph you see not only the alignments of three that we can establish that in a certain way is something has built in the logic of perspective, and there is a system that suggests you as a fixed point to establish the logic of that space. But in the other images we saw more open or natural or close to landscape images. So how do you distinguish the perspective as a visual construct in the sense of how to see and where to see from the actual construction of physical objects, like in architecture or urban design?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Whenever we need a perspective, we need to construct the world in a way that it doesn't confuse us. And that's why we have constructed cities and everything that way, I think. But we cannot escape. We cannot escape this. How can I say this?
Excuse me.
We cannot escape
Subjectivity.
construction, because if we would, it would be very confusing to us as well. But yeah, it's to define a single point of view. I don't know if I answered the question.
Paolo, Gary, may I make just an observation about that? It's short. If I understand correctly, the image are composed of an infinitely narrow views with each have a vanishing point. At the end, it's a long horizontal vanishing point. It's like Californian work, which talks about inverted perspective. The observer become the vanishing point. Another work of Hockney on perspective of memory that he practiced on the road of California, a kind of landscape in movement. There is also digital, his work with digital video that advance in the landscape in Great Britain. I think it's the same research. Just like that.
I'm sorry, what was the research called? Just to look it up.
David Hockney, the painter, he works in California, and I know he works in, I think, in Scotland or in Great Britain.
All right. Yeah, I will look that up as well. Yeah.
He said he want to make perspective of memory. So he make picture after traveling. He make picture in his studio for just with his memory. So the perspective is completely non-geometrical.